Well, we did the broadcast and everything went all fine and proper. And then I was talking to Pam and Bernard afterwards, and Bernard sends me a text. He's like, "Hey, the video is only 1 second long." So, never really did figure out what was up with that, because I probably went for at least 5 or 10 times that. So, we'll just kind of see where we end up. Because I was so excited to get that off my chest on Tuesday, man. I was all proud of it, and then I don't even know if it was a half hour later. It was, and then the news came. So, we get to do that again. We'll see. Now we'll see where we end up. One consolation was on Sunday mornings at the prayer center, they have an 8:30 service for an hour where they can just teach and God doesn't interrupt or anything. And then at 10 o'clock, they have all the ministry stuff for all the late sleepers and church people. So Gary one day had this 8:30 service, and some of the church administration liked it so much they had him do the same thing for 10 o'clock. I'm not sure. I don't know. So knowing he had to do it twice makes me feel better about knowing that I got to do it twice. So well, let's just see where we end up. So, God, we thank you for your words, your life, your wisdom and your knowledge, and your strength, and your patience, for sure. Thank you for bearing with me and for just doing the best we can with what we got now. So, thank you for honing my mind and for teaching me how to keep it in check. For helping me learn how to have a dominion over my senses and my emotions. And I thank you for your guidance most of all. So, all that being said, I guess the biggest, just trying to figure out what all, I don't even know where I started the other day, but one of the main thrusts is taking the rules out of spending time with God, and taking the negativity out, the intimidation, those daunting feelings. Like we're talking to the God of the universe, and He doesn't care about my bill or if I'm going to be able to pay for gas for my car to get to work, or like He doesn't care about that. So I'm not even going to bother with Him because I'm just so humble. Well, we'll get to the humility part later once you guys like me a little bit more. But man, if we think about the just the lengths, well, first off, that God had to go to just dealing with Old Testament people that couldn't even communicate with them like we can. And then we start getting this picture of the depth of what Jesus did for us, of everything that He gave up and put up with. Man, it ain't humility to not bring something to God. Even if it's petty, man. If that's where we're at, that's where God's going to meet us. It ain't about trying to impress God and brown-nosing our way to the top like we can with our corporation or wherever we work or however that works. It's not about smooth words. It's about transformation through and through, not putting on a good front. And God's going to meet us 60 yards back spiritually if that's really where we are. And, we think we're a ways ahead because we've got the comprehension of an adult. We don't need to act like a child in the spirit or, whatever, however people justify it. It's not about that, man. If we're still on round one with God, but we're too proud to admit it and see and concede that we're not on round 4 or 5 or however far along we think we should be, that's where God's waiting to meet us. There ain't no shame in that. There is no shame in that. So what if we're not as far along as we think we should be, or as we could be, or if we haven't been the best stewards of our time, because we still have to make concessions to our flesh because we can only take so much of God at once? Are we still trying? Is our heart still there for God? Are we still trying to sanctify ourselves? Or do we start lying to ourselves about it? All God wants, man, is just that innocence and that real humility. Just come at him like a kid. Just like one of those little 6-year-olds that just asks a million questions and don't give you a chance to answer. Personally, I think those are kind of annoying, but that's exactly how I am with God. Man, it's like I'll just be climbing all over him, asking him a million questions at once and not giving him a chance to answer a single one because I got to get all this off my chest and there's so much I want to learn and I want to know and I want to absorb. And he doesn't even have a second to talk. So, sometimes if I am redirecting my thoughts, he'll be able to slip something in. But most of the time, when I hit that kind of vein, it's just like I just got to get it all out there and just spread it out and just kind of just have a better look at it when it's not just bouncing around in my head. And then just spend some time praying. Just leaving it there with God. Man, that philosophy alone has helped me through so much. Just the first couple of years after I moved here, there was a number of times sort of where my back was against the wall, like it was decision time and there was nobody else to make the decision, that kind of thing. And whether it was my own stupid choices or not, I don't even remember. But it didn't take long after not really having other people around that I can just call up and be like, hey, you want to make a decision for me? That I just decided, well, I don't know if it was a conscious decision so much as one just made out of sheer desperation. But it was like, hey, man, if God's on my side and he knows as much as he says he does, and he loves me as much as he says he does, I'm going to be shameless about getting as close to him as I can, however I can. If there's something in between me and him, it's not on God's end, unless he stopped being God. Man, if there's an issue, it's on me. I need to know where to start finding it and getting rid of it. Simple as that. Like I said, time with God is not supposed to be daunting. It's not supposed to be, well, communion might be a little more intimidating, but that's something for a while later on. But man, as far as just being a counselor, a guide, a helper, friend, there's not that much intimidating about that. Man, my friends, I don't have to be shy with them. Maybe that's why I don't have very many. Huh. Is God too good for our petty little problems? Is he too good to just listen to us complain about how we had a crap day and all we want to do is just punch somebody right in the two front teeth and then make them look stupid for a while till they can go get them repaired? uh, if that's where we're at, man, that's where God's gonna meet us. And it's that's what humility is, just accepting where God really is with us in our walk and taking every step that we need backwards to get to where he is. But yeah, it definitely hurts a little bit there at first because you're like, well, I thought I was a lot further along. What happened? And then God's like, well, actually, that's why you couldn't hear me so well anymore. You kept going when I stopped. Dummy. But God, he doesn't use the intimidation factor, man. If there is anything inside of us that's keeping us from wanting to spend time with God, from wanting to know what God's saying, from wanting an answer from God, just from wanting to vent to God, you may want to look into just getting rid of that now, because all that is religion, and probably some pride too. Those two kind of go hand in hand, so I've heard. God just wants to love you. That's if we distilled the whole Bible down into that. God's just like, hey, you want to be my friend? You want to be my friend? Of course, he's got a little more stipulations on it than the lonely junior high student. But he just wants more people to get to know him. Just more people to help express his love to them and through them. And if we're too proud to get over, if we're too proud to get over ourselves and let God love us the way he wants to instead of the way we think we deserve it, then we deserve what's coming to us apart from God, if all we're doing is separating ourselves from him. Am I right? Am I right? It really is just a gospel of simplicity. That's all it is. That's what throws people off. Man, we all talk a big game about coming to the Lord as a little child, just like what Jesus said we should do. And then we just start analyzing it again, whether it's the Bible or our time with God or things we want to say to God that we don't think warrant time with God, taking up his time as if it was something that he was a slave to. Man, don't let that crap keep you from the one guy that can help you. Do we not see a cycle with this? There ain't nothing wrong with talking to God like he's real. When I was still learning how to put a leash on my emotions, I was having a really, really rough go. It was just one of those, it was more than just one day where it seemed like everything was just falling apart. All this stuff I had been working to build together, to build up in my life, just kind of crumbled in like 36 hours. So I was in pretty bad shape. I was incredibly, incredibly angry. And so I got done at work. I was still at the movie theater at that time, so I got home at like 2 in the morning. And I was just so angry. And easiest way for me to talk to God back then was just with writing. It was more linear that way. If my mind started wandering, I could just go back to the last sentence and pick up from there. And I just sat down and went off on him. And then all he had to say was loving, kind words in response to my petty juvenile outburst. I still read that every once in a while. I was like, man, what was wrong with me? Man, the stuff he told me back, that is stuff I will never in my life forget. The images that he tagged with that and put in my head, I don't know if that's what changed my life. It just reinforced it in such a way that that was not going to be an issue again. I'd probably go back and read that a couple times a year just for perspective. Because, man, I was angry. And I let into God with some pretty colorful language, too. But hey, God said he'd meet us. May as well take him up on it. It's not about pretenses. I mean, that's a lot of that is the kind of crap the Jews had to do, getting ready to do their ministering in the temple. They had to put this garment on and that garment on, and they had to wash their hands like they had OCD, and then they had to do the wave offering, whatever. It's not like that. There was a reason God wanted to get away from that. A lot of that crap just became so about face and about routine that they forgot God even wanted to be a part of it. Man, that is not a relationship. That's why all these people, when they first listen to Jesus, they're like, hey, this guy, he's got something. He's not boring like our pastor. Huh. Or I guess we could say scribe, since we're only talking about the Jesus era and not anything contemporary, of course. The last one was a lot longer than this. Because I know there's stuff I'm leaving out, but some of it I also realize now was completely irrelevant to anything else I was trying to say. So, maybe it's a good thing I ended up having to have another go at this. Maybe I'll just have a rough draft speech on Mondays and then start doing the real thing on Tuesdays. Just so I can filter out the stupid stuff before it gets to you guys. It's worth a shot. We'll see. One thing, I got a few years of written conversations, written and typed up conversations. Sometimes they're just me talking about my day, my week, whatever it was I was struggling with, just things. Sometimes God talked back. Sometimes it was one of those things where it's just like, come on, Pete, you know better than to just be complaining about this same stuff again. And then there was some times where it was like God was across the lake and I can hear him saying something, but it's just real faint. And just so we're clear, it's not God's fault when we can't hear him. And then it just kind of, over time, there was less and less written conversations and more just dynamic back and forth and back and forth. Just like a phone call or hanging out with a friend over dinner or whatever else. That's a lot of times that's where it is now. And there's still sometimes, like just recently, as in the last couple days, God will have brought me to a point where it's time to dump another principle on me or something, some kind of understanding or something that like where I'm strong enough to be able to take what he says to me and not just dissolve or run off and start some new denomination or whatever else. And man, at least for me, God's a big fan of rhetorical questions. There was it was either yesterday or today's conversation, man. I was just spending some time at work. I was just getting a little too far into my own head, and stuff was coming out that was not very pleasant. So I sat down on my break, man. I just started writing. I was like, God, this kind of sucks. I don't know how to deal with it. This is not what I want to see happen. I don't want to see this and this. I don't want to be a part of this. How come you want me to be a part of this? What's the problem? Is there any way out of it? Am I supposed to just suck it up? And then God's like, well, you got what it takes to survive this stuff. But why is it, God asking me, why is it you've spent so many years telling me that you want to be above the systems of this world, tangible and intangible, and yet it's the weight of the world that you keep hanging on to that's keeping you down here? And I was like, huh. Well, you got me on that one, God. Still don't have a real good answer back for him, other than humility. Oh, man, sometimes that hurts. And then right after that, he was like, you've come a long way, but you still got a lot of double-mindedness left in you to work through. It wasn't anything condescending. It was just matter of fact. And, when it's God, it's hard to really argue point for point. It's like, God, well, I think you're wrong on this because I know better. Because I'm more God than I think you are. Zing. There's no the only rules for spending time with God now, after we get born again, that's going to be on buzzword bingo. I gotta think of a better word than that. Anyway, now that we're able to actually have chats one-on-one with God, there's not that many rules for what we cannot do with him, as far as how we approach him, what we can say to him, how we can talk to him, how we can open up to him. Man, extreme example is if God told you to get a bunch of candles and set them in the shape of a pentagram on your bathroom floor and then sacrifice a cat in the middle of it. That's not really the same God as the one I'm talking about. Let's leave it at that. I think it was 1 Corinthians 1. I meant to look it up again today since I've had a couple days to verify, since I wasn't sure on my first go around. But I think it was in 1 Corinthians 1. Paul, he's buttering the Corinthians up a little bit first before he starts tearing into them. And one of the things he said that always did stick out to me was, if we're beside ourselves, it's for God. If we're of sound mind, it's for you. And that should really put into perspective a lot of the things going on in church. And you know, as fun as it would be to go to those places where during the music part or shortly after, when things are still spiritual and out of control, because God's the author of anarchy, apparently, in some churches, that you bring that verse up, and you're like, so you doing all this for God and not like as a form of ministry to each other? Because how does barking like a dog from across the sanctuary to somebody else that's not even paying attention to you, they're crowing like a rooster? How is that? How is that ministry? How is that even anything for God? How is that even anything spiritual? Man, that is emotions and ignorance. But, man, kind of reminds me of when Paul was chastising the Corinthians for all just having chaos in their services because they were all trying to prove how spiritual they were. I can pray in tongues louder than you. I can crow like a rooster louder than you. I don't even have to feel the Spirit to do it. Man, if they were to start doing that at work, somebody would come at them with a straitjacket. That's not real ministry. But, that being said, as far as me personally, now, I'm going to preface that with this. Nobody is in a position to tell you exactly how you're supposed to be spending time with God. There's people that are meant to be points of reference for you as you learn to just kind of carve out your own niche in how you spend your time with Him. But, dude, the ingredients you need is a pure heart that's hungry for God. I don't know if that's 2 ingredients or not. But you just got to be honest with yourself and be like, God, don't matter what I think. What do you think? Because if God is God, we're the ones at His mercy. And putting Him in a box, all that's going to do is help us meet Jesus face to face a little bit sooner. So, it's nobody else's business how you spend time with God when you have a pure heart for Him. Now, of course, if we're back to sacrificing animals in pentagrams, like surrounded by candles, yeah, that's going to call for an intervention. Otherwise, man, Paul talked about singing in the Spirit and singing with the understanding, and David danced before the Lord. Not my thing, but whatever. I was talking to a friend about it, and I was like, because most of the time I'm not really that expressive, and I just kind of keep my emotions in check. So usually God and I have a lot to say about mental stuff, concepts, principles, theories, outlines, and of course there's times, man, when there's a situation that just emotions will get involved. At times like that, man, God's like my padded room. He's like my screaming shed where I just go in there to just let it all go, to just cut loose and be completely uninhibited. That's with God, man. That I go to God to be broken and just curled up on the floor, just crying gibberish, not even knowing what's going on, just knowing that God's right there. In order for him to be able to get across to me the stuff I need to do things like come on here and run off at the mouth for 10, 20, 30, 40 minutes. Man, that place of my brokenness for me personally, man, that's my lifeline. And if somebody, there's been a couple times when just getting to know people and kind of feeling out the religious, spiritual side of everything, that some people have tried correcting me on how I spend time with God. I may not have been the most diplomatic, but I got my point across that that's between me and God. And I know there's improvements to be made, but it's up to me and God to make them. And not some chump in the stadium seating, just being a spectator to my relationship with God. And I told them, man, anything else is gone if it gets in the way of me being able to hear from God. Man, if I lose that lifeline, what else do I have going for me? I'm in too deep. But with that, man, it's just be honest with God. Don't be shy, don't be nervous, don't be afraid or timid. It's God, man. He knows you better than your own self. Better than you know your own self. Let me try that again. It's God, man. He knows you better than you know yourself. We'll put a little bit of enunciation in that instead of the southern twang. What do we have to hide from him? Unless we're lying to ourselves. And then, what's the point in even inviting God into the conversation? Man, why don't we just get a carved out statue of a chubby little guy with his eyes closed? What's the difference then? Yeah, I'm not sure what else I have this time, actually. Cut out all that frivolous crap that I didn't need to say and kind of shortens the time quite a bit. So, no pretenses, no foolish, ignorant assumptions, no jumping to conclusions with God. Just, God, what is my problem? And he'll meet you there. He will. He told me a while back, because I'll ask God a million questions, and half of them will just be the same exact thing over and over and over, just phrased differently. I would just be shameless, because God forbid I forget to ask something. And, doing it with a childlike understanding of spiritual things and of God is a whole lot different than using questions as a stall tactic with God. Man, there's times he's told me that it's none of my business, and man, I still heard him, and he wasn't shy about putting me in my place. And it used to happen a lot more. I've been getting better about it. But there's a couple times I would just have all these questions, man. I just string them off, and then finally I stop and I'm just kind of waiting to see where God's gonna pick it up, and I can sense Him starting to, because I'm kind of gauging up for the response, and so it got me on the edge of my seat, man. I'm ready to start writing everything down as fast as I can. And then He's just like, a lot of these questions, I'm not here for your pride, son. I'm here to help you grow up. These questions, it's just so you can know something. It's just so, basically, He equated that slew of questions to trying to be a spiritual gossip, if you can even be that. Because I was asking God, I was like, well, what's going on with this person? I mean, what's the deal? Where am I at in all of this? And He was like, hey, this is your pride talking. I got nothing to say to it. And I thought, well, I guess you made a pretty clear point, God. What can we do to fix that? So then He had a little bit more to say to me once He put me in my place and showed me where I started going wrong. But if we're not following the same steps as Jesus, obviously we're wrong somewhere. We may as well start small and build our way back up to where He is, or where He was on this earth. Not where He is right now. There's only one right hand of God. Anyway, man, no reservations with God. Reckless abandon. When you start trying to feign ignorance, that's when we start to be at the mercy of demonic stuff. But man, if we just throw ourselves at God's mercy and do the best we can with what we know, with what we have, that's all God needs. That's all He needs. And yeah, as we learn to be more like Him, man, He's going to start expecting more of us. Imagine that. Doesn't mean we're not capable. Man, if He's the one that built us up Himself, we are more than capable. Just because our mind looks at this scenario and they're like, nah, you can't do that. That's impossible. And then we start looking at, well, yeah, I can't really figure out the logistics for this. Did I hear God? And the whole time we're over here trying to analyze it, and God's got His team jersey on, just waiting to go. Just me and Him. And then I look over, see Him in his our logo, our jersey, our uniform. It's like, oh, you're getting in on this, God? And He's like, well, yeah. What'd you think I was going to do? And then it's like, well, I guess this isn't really as hard as I thought it was going to be. If we got the guy that created everything on our side, what do we have to be shy of? What right do we have to be scared or afraid or timid? None. But in growing up with God, He's going to take us through a lot of those, we can just call them childhood fears. And He's going to show us that it's just smoke and mirrors, man, built up in our own mind. Just a ruse, trying to keep us in the chains of our own small thinking. And God will walk right up with you to the very thing you're scared of, and he'll just kind of fan the smoke away and be like, see, that stink is the devil, but the rest of this stuff, that it's nothing. Those are some of the best times for me that I've ever had with him. Knowing that I gotta face something, and knowing that God is right there with me to help me face it, to carry me through the whole thing if that's what it comes down to, man. He'll do it. So, love you guys, and hopefully we'll talk in like 12 days instead of 2 weeks. We'll see. All right, cool. I gotta figure out that. There it is. All right. Love you. Peace.